there's no magic bullet. There's no overnight success. There's no, nobody's going to take the responsibility of sales, for God's sake, away from you as an entrepreneur, business owner.
Welcome to the Mastering E-commerce Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Eitan Koter, co-CEO of Vimy. In an era of rising acquisition costs and increased competition, this podcast is dedicated to helping you drive sales, engage customers, and build meaningful communities so you can turn passive visitors into active buyers. Now let's get started with the episode. Welcome back, listeners, and I'm really excited about our guest today. I'm going to speak with Terresa Zimmerman. She is a founder entrepreneur, founder and CEO of Wood Underwear. She also hosts an amazing podcast called Main Street Matters podcast, also advisor and a coach. Terresa, this is so much. Where do we start even? So tell me what's the connecting fabric for all of these initiatives? I mean, where this passion is coming from?
Wow, that's a big question. So put simply, I love Main Street. Main Street in my world means independent retail. I didn't know that I loved Main Street until I founded Wood Underwear and started working with these businesses. Doing all of these things, sort of plays to my it's not a diagnosed ADD, but I do like to have a lot of things in the air all at once. I'm one of these people that, the more I have going, the more I actually get done. With balance, of course. I have years where it's like, okay, Teresa, you can't start a single thing until you, shed something. So there is that as well. So yeah, a lot of it's just driven by passion. I find things where there is need and where I feel like I can play a role and where I can be passionate about it.
Interesting. So you said you love Main Street and love retail, but you founded a brand. And obviously you focus on wholesale. And so this is your approach to just get into more of the deep dive into the retail world, right? Through brand management and just working with all these retailers, helping them obviously with their transformation probably as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the one thing I'll correct you is that I did not love retail. I am not a shopper. In my brand marketing consulting world, I was focused on business to business. I got thrown the consumer brand every now and then, but my love really was in the back end stuff, the mining and metals and technology infrastructure and, all of the things that had nothing to do with shopping. And then there were enough people in the agencies that wanted to work on all those fun, fancy, sexy brands. And I actually thought that the other stuff was a little sexier, the stuff that drives the stuff. And so when I got into starting my brand, I didn't know anything about retail. I didn't know anything about being a consumer because it just was, I did it because I had to, not because I wanted to. I'm not a shopper. And I accidentally found out that I loved independent retail stores and the sort of the owner operators of independent retail. And I probably started on the wholesale side because I do like the B2B part of it. And of course I have an e-com site as well, but yeah. And then advising these businesses on their whole business, including, and not literally advising, but including encouraging them to be online and use technology and all of the tools available to them to further their businesses. That just kind of came natural to me too.
Obviously, we see the growth of D2C, but B2B is just growing much faster, and the volumes of business on B2B is just so much bigger than D2C, right? And this is just even the growth rate is increasing, lately, and it's really interesting to see. And this is something you started not today, right? It was like 12, 13 years ago, right? And even right?
Almost 13. Almost 13.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that, it's funny. When I started Wood Underwear, I didn't. This is going to sound really horrible, but we're going to be filled with all of the things that I didn't know. This whole conversation is going to be all about what I didn't know and all the things I did wrong. But when I founded Wood Underwear, I didn't really think about the fact that there were trade shows for apparel. I had spent a lot of my, consulting career avoiding trade shows because it just wasn't my favorite thing. And then, I'd go to these trade shows and I'd hear all of these store owners saying, oh, the internet's taking over the world. And this is only 13 years ago. and I can't compete and da 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 da. And I think at the time it was like 7 to 8% of shopping was on the internet,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at these people going, okay, well, that actually means that more than 90% of shopping is happening in stores. So can we just kind of flip that on its head, please?
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
COVID changed a little
it,
bit, but
it grew. I mean, the overall online business has obviously grown, but it's not more than maybe 23, 25% in the US, right? Not more. It's not China where 90% is online of retail, right? And in some of the niches like furniture, I think 90% is offline, right?
right.
So
Yeah.
it's depending on the niches. So obviously there is some kind of fun going to a brick and mortar shop. People still respect that experience, and it's very, very important. And you're one of the guests that I was really happy to prepare for our episode because I mean I found a lot of information about you, which is really
Oh,
nice. Yeah, it's I guess from the various things that you did throughout your career. One of the things that you said is that MBA. You said your MBA from the world, right? I mean, shaped your approach to business and overall. So, what are some of the, let's say, the pivotal real world lessons that the classroom could never provide in your career?
oh, wow. That's a heavy question. And there's about 72 thoughts going through my head all at once right now. So one, I think I think my exposure to a lot of different things, a lot of different cultures, um, and maybe this was in me already, but I think that exposure sort of opened my mind further to say there's always a solution, there's always another side to it, there's not ever two sides to things, there are many sides to every issue,
Hmm.
there are many ways to solve every problem, every challenge, every barrier that comes up. You can look at it as a barrier, you can look at it as a learning experience, you can look at it as a challenge or a competitive thing to go conquer, or you walk away from it. But I think that the exposure that I had kind of in my early career and throughout, in moving myself around the world and being thrown out of my comfort zone physically, sort of blend lends itself to having to mentally be out of your comfort zone all the time
Yeah.
too and figure it out.
I mean, it's kind of a lifestyle to put yourself always in a position that you can take yourself out of the comfort zone, right? It's you're pushing yourself. It's not something you learn in MBA, I guess. And it's something that is very, very important for any entrepreneur out there, right? And so you mentioned before your focus on the back end, and I want to talk to you about the operational side of things and your specific focus on the simplifying operation, having the KISS model. And how do you strike a balance between streamlining operation, but on the other hand, innovating in a fast-paced industry?
Well, I think the two go hand in hand. I think the more complex your operating environment, the harder it is to innovate. I
Hmm.
mean, think about big ships, they're hard to turn, you know,
Wow, yeah.
you know, bite-sized things, and the pivot is amazing. I mean, when I was in Hong Kong, I had the great opportunity to race Hobie cats, 16-foot Hobie cats, Hobie 16s. And in Hong Kong, if you and I'm sure you've been there, but in Hong Kong, you're sharing the ocean and the water with shipping lanes and these massive tankers, and you're this little. I don't even know if you're a speck from the bridge of some of these tankers, but you're you can't expect them to move. They can't move, but you and a Hobie 16 have to take advantage of the wind direction when you have it, and be able to pivot out of their way. And you don't want to get in their way and have them take their wind from your sail. That's
Hmm.
a problem too, especially if you're in front of them. They just roll over you like an ant. But yeah, so I think they go hand in hand. The more you can just keep it in bite-sized chunks, the more easy it is to pivot and to move and shift. And I think it's also a mindset as far as how, when you do something, do you have an evaluation process to go with that? And as part of your evaluation, even if it went fabulously, thinking about what you can do better and what you can do more of and what you can do differently.
Hmm.
And I think that's, again, the bigger the organization, the more, infrastructure, the more people involved, the more disciplined you have to be about doing that. It's not impossible, absolutely, but it is a culture.
What is your philosophy towards operation and supply chain? Is it more like let's build an internal teams, or let's just work with experts out there? I mean,
Uh,
source or build. It's
I bootstrap my business, so it's all about, just in time delivery. And I have so many mistakes. It's
mm,
all about outsourcing, and I have so many mistakes. It's all about, bringing people in and resources in when you need them. And I have so many mistakes that I've made as far as, that philosophy goes. But, that was how I've, managed to keep this brand Wood Underwear around for 13 years almost.
yes.
So
So what it was like an ongoing iteration. I mean, having this agility in your mind and just cut losses as fast as you can.
yes, and in many cases, I didn't cut them fast enough. It's one of the things that I was looking for when I started, and this really comes from lack of experience and really maybe lack of confidence in myself and what I was doing, is I kept looking for that magic bullet that was going to just jump sales. That was this person that I needed, or this sales team, or this sales rep or agency that was just going to go out there, and we were just going to light a fire and skyrocket. I made a lot of mistakes with people who I thought that could do that for me, and then I'd bring them in and I'd let go.
Mhm.
And letting go was my mistake, because nobody's gonna there it's not, and it's not to do with anything that they did wrong necessarily. It's just that there's no magic bullet. There's no overnight success. There's no, nobody's going to take the responsibility of sales, for God's sake, away from you as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, business
Yeah,
owner.
that was
If you're
one of the greatest mistakes, just hiring sales too early, right? And
right,
and think they can do a better job than you.
right,
That's yeah. So you talk
yeah,
about team and how do you cultivate you know get it done culture within a company? It's kind of people are not staying so long, and it's they're shifting very very fast, moving from one company to the other. So what are some of the things that you can recommend for team building and
yeah.
company
I mean,
culture?
well, first of all, it's for me anyway. It is lead by example. I mean, there's a lot of that. Do if you I've done and I do every role, and knowing where I put my time and where my time is most important is one thing. And I'm constantly working on that, because again, I like to dive deep into the details, but I don't need to all the time. But you need to be able to do that and show people that what they do is as important for them as it is for you. I mean, I had this kid work for me. This is years ago, and we were getting ready for an event, and we have this big marquee, 12-foot marquee that we set up. That's got all branded, and I I said, okay, we got to pull this out of the warehouse and go get it cleaned up, and we've got our list of things we've got to prepare. And so he pulls it out of the warehouse and he gets the hose out, and so I come out with the scrubber, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, come on, we got to get this done. This is important." He's like, I've never had anybody come and do this kind of work." I'm like, "Let's do it."
Yeah.
So we scrubbed the tent down. It was awesome.
So how did
But
you make the shift? I mean, at some point of time, you realize that you need to let go, right?
yeah, that's hard for me, but it's a matter of hours in the day, and it
Hmm.
is a matter. I'm not a micromanager either, so that part is easy for me to let go. I do like to know kind of what's happening, and but I'm just not naturally a micromanager. I don't believe, as we talked about already. I think there's many ways to handle every single thing, and the way you do something might not be the way I do it, but the end result might be the same. and and inspiring somebody to make their own choices in how to get there. I think that's really important, and I shouldn't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Let's check in, and if you have questions, be open and all of that. So I think that's a culture thing, and that comes from a leadership perspective.
Yes, and it seems that everything is getting more and more complex, and it requires a lot of expertise. I mean, in any aspect of the business, right? Even the head of any department is good to some extent because it's getting more complicated, and the speed of changes is increasing always. There's a lot of requirements for external help for trying to figure out how things work, both on the marketing side and operational side, customer support, AI getting into the picture. So
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
changing is happening together.
That's true. Although I would argue that generalists are maybe even more important now. We have
Hmm.
to have the specialists, we have to have people with deep knowledge, but you've got to have the generalists. You've got to have people who can connect. I mean, I think that's one of my strengths is, being connecting things. Look at my LinkedIn profile and you're going, what the heck? But I can
Hmm.
connect. It all
Yeah.
connects me, and making those connections is really important. And I think generalists can do that. People who can look at a whole body of work, a whole body of challenges, and bring in all the things, even if they can't dive so deep into the details and the technicalities of those things. And so I hope we're training generalists as well, because that's going to be really important. Because
Yes,
and I think that's actually maybe a harder skill to learn, is being that generalist.
obviously. It's also related to ego and letting things go, but also to people skills and having the right foundation to create
Mm.
teams around you that are complementary to what you do, right? And not don't be afraid of building a strong team. So that's important.
Yeah.
You also have a background in brand strategy and disruption, and so how do you identify when a brand needs to evolve or to pivot?
Ooh, so there are some obvious signs. So when I was doing that kind of work, the really obvious places are when there is a competitive disruption. Your competitor has just done something in the
Mm-hmm.
marketplace, whether it's acquired somebody, divested, gone public, gone private, um, CEO change, whatever that market shift is from your competition.
Mm-hmm.
What you're going through that yourself, right? Acquisition is a very big thing. If you're incredibly acquisitive, that can change your entire company, and then you've got to decide what that bigger company looks like culture wise and how you put those pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, there's some of that stuff is the easy stuff. And then I think there's also some introspection that happens as companies age and says, okay, are we still addressing the right market? And market externally, yes. From it can be consumer, your channels, but it can also be internal. So if you've got some shifts going on internally, that you need to revisit what you stand for and what your values are, and maybe you haven't done it for a while and you don't know if they're still applicable. So there's a lot of that has to happen as well. And then bringing it back to the smaller businesses, it's almost what's interesting is I found it's almost like you forget to do it. So I can understand bigger businesses forgetting, although they've got infrastructure that you've got timelines for things and you've got people that are specifically in charge of those things. Whereas a smaller business, you're like, what the heck just happened? It's 5 years since I redid my website. What? And my look and feel, where's my photography? I was very intentional about this. Oh my gosh, that was 10 years ago. And then you kind of look at your external reflection and you go, oh my god, I am not on top of this. And I can tell you I'm in that moment right now, so I've got to go back through that. But
Yeah.
it is because like with all of the shifts in technology and how people are moving online versus offline, and then how your both visual and verbal and values brand is interplaying with those internal and external models. I mean, all of that needs to be looked at on a regular basis, and I'm behind the curve on that right now.
Yes. Yes. And also in your career, there is a lot of creativity expression or focus. You obviously launched the podcast, you wrote the book, and you spend a lot of time on brand management. So tell us more about that. What's your approach to storytelling? How important it is for any leader out there to have this creativity and mindset?
Yeah, I think stories are so important, and I happen to have the great pleasure of working with some amazing storytellers. Um, there's and to learn what that means, because I I didn't know that in the beginning, and I think every time I interact with people, I learn the power of that. I mean, recently I've just done a deep dive into some consumer profiling, because what I was hearing from my stores is that their customers are aging out, and so I'm like, that's impossible. The world is, of course, your customers are aging out, but they're still out there. They're shopping somewhere, and could they still shop for you? And so, yeah, you've got to kind of look at that. And what I found is that in some research, there's a lot of research actually out there that says younger people do want to shop in stores. They want what stores have to offer. And one of the most powerful things that some stores are doing is using social media to tell the story. It's not about what the outfit of the day is, although those things are fun and interesting as well. And it's not about being overly promotional. Here, use a code and shop online. What's driving a lot of the attention from some of these stores that are doing it well is they're going behind the scenes in their businesses. So they are
Nice.
actually sharing what they do day to day, that is about their own story and about the story of running their store. So, I mean, I was one of these. I walked by a retail store going, that's got to be an easy business, blah, blah, blah. But
Hmm.
you learn more about it and you go, oh my God, these people are wearing so many hats. You've got to be, um, bookkeeper, um, tailor, shopper, seller, accountant, CPA, I mean, technologist, all of these things. And, when people start to understand what you do, there's great connection and engagement in that. There's one of the stores that I work with up in Ann Arbor. He's a tailor, and he social media not his thing, and he had a group coming into his shop doing content, and they followed him in the back room because he's not interested, and he's doing his work, making clothing. And so they asked if they could videotape. They did. They put a little 90-second thing together. He said, okay, do it. They posted on TikTok, and the followers he got was crazy.
Wow.
So
Nice.
interesting. And these guys in these stores who can tell the stories about why they chose this piece of clothing, what's the fabric, what's the function of it. I do that with underwear all the time. I mean, with men's underwear, it is so women hear these stories all the time. From the time we're told what kind of underwear we should wear with what and why. Men are not told these things. So you start talking to men about, hey, you know black underwear under white linen, probably not the right thing to do. And here's why, right? Or here's why you need this kind of fabric for your 10-day camping trip where you're taking two pieces versus, your gym underwear versus your date night underwear. And all of those three pairs of underwear are not the same underwear. So you start telling the stories and talking about the reasons why, the behind the scenes part of it, and people really engage. And that's the power of storytelling.
Yes. And everything relates to funnel-led content or employee-generated content is very, very powerful. It's the way to differentiate today.
Yeah.
So looking
Yeah.
at Main Street and working with those stores, what do you see is their main challenge right now, or maybe some of the opportunities or the transformation maybe they need to go?
Well, pre-pandemic, I would have said, "Oh, you guys have to all get online." I used to run into stores where it's like, "Oh, I got to wait until my grandson or son comes in and they'll print my email out."
Hmm.
They just weren't technology savvy as a whole, as a huge stereotype, of course, but as a whole. Whereas the pandemic forced people to go online a little bit more, and using technology, I think, was a really good thing. And that's that so that is happening, and meeting a different kind of consumer, a younger consumer, all of that, using online and offline, both methods, combined, I think is a big deal for them. But the challenge right now is really more about staffing. It's getting people, but there's storytelling that can be done there too. I didn't know I loved Main Street until I started talking to these people. So, from a staffing perspective, what's the business opportunity? What's the career opportunity? Is there a career in retail? Absolutely. And there are opportunities out there right now to work your way into store ownership. I mean, it's really it is combining the storytelling and the passion that owners have for their business with their approach to staffing. I think could be a powerful thing.
I mean, I'm looking at the investment and the tech sector for retailers is just booming, right? With so many use cases, digitalization of shelves, all the follow up, after the order, right? And I
Right.
mean, there's so many topics that are getting so much momentum, and these companies are doing really, really well. And I for sure, I mean, there is a huge opportunity over there, and there's a bright future because I guess most people who want to go to buy offline, that's the fact. That's a fact. So
well, it is, but the power is that e-com allows these independent retail stores to be as big-ish, not literally, be as big in someone's mind as the big stores, and
yeah,
they have a leg up because they're relationship driven and they offer personalized service.
yes,
And younger consumers want, I think there's just a lot more, they grew up with more of an understanding of social responsibility and responsibility and, being part of their communities and supporting their local stores and local restaurants and things, it becomes part of that. And so I think that
yes,
the independent retail stores online e-com gives them a whole world and leg up
yeah.
than over some of these bigger guys.
Interesting. I mean, online is like a different war zone, right? I mean, it's different things that needs to be done for customer acquisition. It's very, very expensive, but I understand what you say, where they're coming from and the background. Okay, great. So tell us more about wood underwear. I mean, you've been doing this for, you said, almost 13 years. So what's the unique story, and why do you think you've been successful all those years?
Well, I think there's been moments I've been successful and moments where I've gone, oh, what have I done? I got into it because I was seeking depth in in what I was doing. Excuse me. I was seeking depth in what I was doing and what I had in my life and ownership, and I wasn't necessarily looking for like literal ownership, financial ownership. That's what it turns out to be. But I was looking to build something of my own, because when you're in consulting, you're building everybody else's stuff all the time, and sometimes you can't even talk about it because it's not yours. And so through uh, a process of research and talking to a whole bunch of people, underwear came out of it, was one of the many things that came out of it. And my husband just kind of looked at me and said, because he got a prototype, and he's like, you got to do this. Men have nothing, and 13 years ago, it was kind of true. You walk into a department store, for example, and it's all women focused. And then maybe in the basement in this corner, here's the men's section.
Yeah.
And it's still pretty true today, although it's diversified a lot, and there's a lot more out there for men today. But still, and I looked at the market that way and said, okay, I can make a place for myself here, make a place for a brand. There is a spot, there's a position here we can take, and bringing to bear some amazing fabrics that women have had all along that men didn't really know about. With a really fun brand, wood. We're playing off the name, of course, and but the fabric has wood viscose in it, so it's cotton viscose and elastane. We use a Lenzing Tencel viscose, which is beech tree cellulose. It's highly sustainable. It's self-propagating. It's an Austrian company's technology, so there's a ton of information and backup research on all the things that are amazing about it. And then it was a matter of kind of saying, okay, well, how are we launching this thing? And I was in Hermosa Beach, California at the time when I launched the business, and ended up launching on the beach, basically under a tent, with around beach sports when people aren't wearing underwear, they're not thinking about buying underwear, um, and they could care less about underwear at the beach. So that's where I launched. And primarily I did it from a content perspective. And so it was just a little bit irreverent. And I love that about brands being a little bit irreverent and trying to be intelligent about it. And so, so we, sponsored all kinds of beach sports and pulled together content, tried to use it, and got influencers, and we'd send people out into the local bars in the evenings, and do a halftime quiz, and throw out underwear in the bar. And so we were able to, at the time, it was kind of a big deal. I think we ended up like with 15,000 earned Facebook followers at the
Wow.
time within the first 6 months. And so that was fabulous. I think they've made that really hard very quickly after that. It's a really hard thing to do, but it was fun while it lasted. And that content, to this day, we still, beach sports are still part of our thing, and anything to do with, sports that we can have a playoff of wood. We tend to love also. So yeah, and really started out because I put a bunch of stuff in my car and drove it around to stores and walked in and asked if they wanted to see my underwear.
Wow.
So it was kind of one of those things.
Nice. So you have an online store, but you focus as a wholesale, right? That's as
Yes, that's correct. And I encourage, the stores to put us online. So we
Mm-hmm.
are on a lot of stores. As the independent stores are coming online, we are absolutely saying, hey, how do we support you in bringing us online with you?
Mm-hmm.
So that's another, maybe a different way to look at being online.
Yes.
But yes,
Yes.
our own store as well, because we're a small brand. We definitely punch above our weight class as far as a brand goes, because we are still small. I still, we're still independent, privately owned, and so it's we do what we can. But I'm a big believer in putting my money where my mouth is, and that's Main Street.
Nice. Nice. So let's talk about the book and maybe the podcast also. Wow.
Sure,
What?
sure. So behind me, you can see the illustrations. Those
Yeah.
are from the book, Oh Lords, and this is me exposing myself. My co-author Jess Aberhart and I kind of laid it all out there in this book called Oh Lords. Um, it came about. It was our COVID project. It was how we were productive in COVID because stores completely shut down
Yeah.
for many. And so we had some time, and what she was doing too, it was everybody had big gaps, and we wrote a book out of it. And we probably finished the book within a couple of months, and then it took us a while to figure out what to do with it and get it launched and get it out there. But Christine Steiner is who did the illustrations back there, and she's fabulous. She's got a great Instagram page. She does high fashion illustration, and that came out of some of my interaction with the retail industry as well. So
Okay. So it's like it's stories. Okay. Great.
yeah,
So it's
so the essence of it really is life lessons through dating stories. So it's really what did we learn about ourselves and about life through interactions we had, and the interactions were focused on dating stories. So
nice.
it's pretty funny.
And Main Street Matters.
Funny and serious.
Got it. And Main Street Matters, the podcast. When did you launch
And
it, and what's the focus there?
yeah, so I've been thinking about it for a while, and the focus really is on telling independent retail stories. And a lot of them I know. So you start where you know, and I don't know how you started your podcast, but I only knew how to call people I did know and say, "Hey, will you be on a podcast?" And they're like, "What's it about?" I'm like, well, I can't show you yet because there isn't one. So
Yeah.
um, so I just called up these store owners and said, "I want to tell your story. This is important. People don't go on trips to cities and towns to go visit the big box stores. They want to go see the local culture, and independent retail is part of that local culture and really, really important for developing and driving neighborhoods. So that it came out of that. And we've only got 12 episodes out. So it's
No, no.
very new. It is all about telling the stories of Main Street and helping them learn from each other as well, because
Mhm.
you're a small business, you're sitting in a room on your own oftentimes, and you're wearing every single hat. who do you bounce things off of? Who do you learn from? And so this is, one of those avenues that I hope people are learning from and sharing what works and, commiserating over what doesn't.
Okay, great. So we will share all this information in the episode show notes, of course, about wood underwear.
Thank you.
About the podcast, the book. Great. Teresa, anything else you want to add?
We covered my whole life in 30 minutes.
Okay, I'm not sure. Maybe 10%, I guess. Professional. Great. It was really fun first, and lots of practical advice and a lot of knowledge. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me on, Eitan. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for listening to the end of this episode. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe so you won't miss any of our future content. Explore Vimy, the video commerce platform that includes live shopping, shoppable video, and social commerce capabilities. Visit Vimy at www.vimy.net. We appreciate your support and look forward for bringing you more valuable insights in our next episode.